Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card. So today's pick a card is one of those sort of very general ones. It's sort of like, what do you most need to know right now? So this could cover anything. So right at the beginning, we're going to sort of try and set the scene about what type of area in life or the types of areas in life that the message or messages are about. It's one of those ones that very much, if you feel drawn to more than one pile, definitely go and see more than one, because there could be more than one sort of topic or set of topics that Spirit wants to talk to you about. But equally, if only one is drawing you, only go to one. I like to do these every once in a while because they are just kind of broad and generic, and so it sort of allows for all sorts of different messages to come through. It also, for me, is a good way if I've got sort of a number of new decks and I want to kind of like showcase them. I can do that all in one reading by having each pile about one particular deck, and that's the case at the moment because I got a Etsy purchase that came through very recently. I got a deck from Vermilion. And I also got a Kickstarter that I backed, and it finally sort of came through. But that actually was quite quick. That was a very well-run Kickstarter campaign. So I thought, why not do one? Why not sort of showcase the deck? So that's what we have here. And there's not a lot of introduction I need to do apart from telling you about the decks and the piles and so forth so that you can make your choice or choices. So pile number, what I did do is that I shuffled each before putting it down, and I said to Spirit that please let me find the first major arcana card that comes up as I deal out after shuffling is going to be part of the message and help with the choice. So that's what each of these cards represent. So for pile number one, we have the Devil. This is from the Atlas Tarot deck. So this was the Kickstarter I was mentioning. It's quite a dark looking card, this one. They're not all, but it's kind of a very futuristic, maybe on another planet, space agey type of deck. So that may draw you, or the concept of the Devil, which is about things where we're sort of bound up by something or caught by something, or we need to free ourselves, or sometimes big power issues, big organisations, big politics, big social causes and stuff can get caught up in the Devil energy as well. So that may draw you. For pile number two, we have the Art Nouveau deck. That's the one that I got from Etsy. Very beautiful deck, very beautiful sort of colouring and so forth. And we have the Hierophant there. So this will have something to do with the realm of the Hierophant. So this could be anything from your philosophy and your spirituality to learning to the systems and traditions of life that are somehow important. And then the third deck is the Land of Stories Tarot, which is the one that I got from Vermilion. And that has the Death card. And that, of course, is about change, choice, transition, that kind of thing. So go with whatever one or ones draw you. As always, I have the timestamps in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome, pile one, to your reading. So you came to the reading with the Devil. So as I say, the Devil card is all about what sort of is either power issues, what sort of like is difficult or challenging to deal with that, or, the pursuit of power and so forth. So it could depend upon what it is and where you are in your life. It can be the things that have bound us up, the addictions and obsessions and so forth. It can be that energy coming towards us. So there's something in that space. Now, the fact, as I say, that you came to this deck, which has a kind of a space-agey, futuristic sort of energy, and the Devil here is not sort of working with the traditional sort of devil implements, but it sort of looks like almost like they're using a kind of combination of an ancient sort of altar and something technological. I feel like there's something in this which has to do with who you are in this new world and the escaping the bonds of anything that is not true to you. And it's not an easy thing. So we've got the first house here, which tells us this is something about how you're projecting yourself into the world, how people are seeing you. It does talk about the body, how you present yourself. For some, this could actually be showing that you are looking at a fairly significant transition around, could be anything from your gender to the way you want to present yourself, to your, like the kind of culture energy that you want to do. There's something like that. It's got to do with the energy of how you present yourself in the world, either to increase your power and your presence in a way that is captivating and draws people to you because you have some sort of purpose in mind, which could be the case here, or it could be to become more authentic, to free yourself from energies that have held you back. So I think this is all about change. It's all about the power to enact change that is true to you, but it's not an easy thing. Now, one of the things I've built into this, the structure of this particular reading, is we are going to look at shadow and light. So I think this is a very apt thing here. What you also have is the Grand Cross, the provoker. For some of you, how you present yourself, particularly if this is around something where power, presence, influencing is involved. You are a provocateur. You are a potentially contrarian. You'd be the sort of person who had the different viewpoint. You're not necessarily going with the mainstream. You may have a great cause around all of that in a workplace, socially, online. If not that, there's something about the way that you're presenting yourself to provoke a reaction, but it's about either tilting at power to say that you can't, tie me up, you can't define me, or it's about achieving some sort of power status or whatever around that. For some of you, this sort of looks very much like energy that is sort of more bohemian or freedom oriented or whatever. But for some of you, it may also be how are you going to present yourself now in a place of power, in a place, in a workplace or something like that, to provoke people enough that you are allowed in, so to speak, to the power realms, to be promoted or something like that. But it's very material. It's very about power. It's very about presence. It's very about who you actually are. But the Grand Cross is a tricky aspect. It excites and ignites action, so there will be action around this. For some, you are freeing yourself from some constraints that are absolutely not necessary anymore on you and are not true to you, and you're going to provoke anybody who tries to stop you. But for others, there could be an internal balance that you're trying to deal with for yourself in how you present yourself and how you fit in with the world that you're in. Because the Grand Cross is 4 planets that are at 90 degrees to each other, so it's effectively like 4 planets, with oppositions and squares. They are not bad aspects. People go, oh, opposition or square. They are challenging, but they're also the thing that creates action, creates dynamism. If you were wanting to break out of something that was restrictive, you would need this sort of energy, or at least squares or oppositions to provoke within yourself the need to change who you were. So it's not a bad thing, but it is tension. So I'm actually going to use, I don't know if they'll use this at all in other readings, but in this one, because we've got this particular thing, I'm actually going to use the astro dice to roll till I get 4 planets, just to look at what the planets could be here and just tell us a little bit more about what's going on. So the first planet is Saturn. Okay, this is definitely about the powers and structures of the world, the powers and structures in your life, like your learning and the discipline. It may be that you are looking to break free from restraints that you have had, or you are impatient with Saturn. It could be that you feel things are going too slowly. You want to see greater change quicker, and you're going to be much more present in making that change. Saturn, and then we have the South Node, moving away from things, breaking karmic bonds, that kind of energy. So that's really powerful. There's something here that is karmic, something here that's come through. Many of you may have been put in positions of power or the exact opposite, and this is part of your karma to sort of break free and provoke a change. So we've got karmic bonds being broken as part of this. Very, very emotionally resonant, something that matters to the heart, very psychic potentially. Could be a breakthrough around your own psychic ability and who you are in a system rather than being part of the system, a very awakening sort of energy. And Neptune, yeah, it's very psychic with Moon and Neptune. So you have Moon and Neptune that are kind of the liminal space. We have the South Node, which is karmic stuff that you're moving away from, and we have Saturn, which is structures. I think for many of you, this is about a pivotal time in your life now where you are breaking free of the bonds of old karma, old systems, all of that kind of thing to find who you really are. This is what this is about. And it could play out, because of the nature of this, it could play out in career, it could play out, as I say, in things like the way that you relate to others, your own gender, any of those sort of things. Could be around your philosophy, could be anything. But this is very driven from the liminal space, very driven from your higher self. But because we've got the devil there, you're having to also navigate the shadows. And I think the shadows are kind of the Saturn South Node aspect of it. It's what is old that needs to be let go of, need to be freed from to fully express yourself. So it'll be interesting to see as we go through this, because as I say, the way that I saw this reading going was that it would look at shadow fairly significantly. Because when we're looking at what we need to know, that's often the thing we most need to know and we most often avoid knowing. So let's use tarot. Let's get a little bit more information. So I want to get a little bit more idea about what this is all about so that we can maybe work out for the majority of you what area of life this really is about. Then we're going to have a look at what is really sort of like conscious and clear to you in this at the moment, and then what's unconscious or hidden that needs to be recognised. So firstly, just let's know a little bit more about how you are personally liberating yourself using your sort of psychic intuition and your capacity to break old karmic bonds. So we have the Queen of Wands, the Knight of Wands, the Page of Wands. Wow, these have been shuffled, so this is interesting. Strength reversed, the Chariot reversed. Wow, this is big. Like you've got, it actually involves a lot of people, a lot of people. I think this is partly some aspects of you, but I do think that it's a lot of people involved. You've got like 3 of the 5 cards are court cards, and I think in this case it's saying that this is like an organisation, a cause, a group, a family situation, a soul tribe situation. There's something where there's a lot of people. There's a lot of fiery energy. It's a lot about power, a lot about ego associated with this. There is within it, at least the energy is not... It's clear, it's seen by you. You can see it, like the things that you're dealing with, you can see it because these are all upright. What is a little bit more hidden is what you want to do and your own strength. So this looks like most of you are in a situation. Now, as I say, this could be family that you don't really feel you fit in with and you want to be very different and show that. It could be a workplace that's very authoritarian or ego-oriented or very competitive with all that fire energy, and you have strengths, but you're holding them back to be ready to really make your mark. It could be a political cause, it could be a social cause. Now there is something psychic about this, as we say, because we saw that with the ground cross, but it's playing out in the area of ego and competition and power on that level. This is, if you had to break free of something, if this is talking to you about breaking free of something, it would be breaking free of being in this sort of a team, which is all about, I have to win, my way or the highway, my creative vision. Now, there's nothing wrong with creative vision. There's nothing wrong with having a direction. But that for some reason, this has got too competitive, too compulsive, and it's either an environment that's not allowing you to show your strength, so some of this is actually like leaving the environment you're in, or it's that you're getting your firepower ready to deal with this and to come out swinging, and say, this is who I am. I'm not the same as you. It may even be that you're more a collaborative sort of person. You're in a very competitive environment, and you go like, I can see sort of why it's happening, but it's actually not helping. We're getting stuck in old patterns. It's a bit like they sort of say that thing about, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. You could be in a situation like that where people are kind of almost calcified into a competitive sort of environment, and you're in a business that's starting to fail, and it's like nobody will take responsibility for that. Like there could be a lot of groupthink actually if this is around an organisation or a cause. But as I say, it's very open. You know what you're dealing with. There are some good people associated with it, but there are some that are a little bit hot-headed, and there are some that kind of haven't got the maturity to deal with whatever's going on. And if this is in your family, this sort of feels like maybe there's a parent or a figure that is actually self-actualized enough to understand what you're doing, but there's like a lot of competition. Like if it's in a family, it's a lot of sibling rivalry or something like that going on. So the other thing is that there's a lot of speed around all of this, and a real risk of burnout. So I think all of this is about you understanding the people and the environment you're around. But as I say, you have a lot of strength and you have a destiny, you have a direction that you're going in. You're just not showing it yet. So this is all about something is going to provoke you to be more open about this, or you're preparing to do that. And what you're going to be is quite provocative because it's very different. So I think you'll know if this is the right reading for you, because it's something like that. And it's, as I say, family, social causes, workplace, something like that. There's a lot about power. This is freeing the true you, but in an environment where it's very used to one particular way of things being done. And what you're going to do is provoke a change. So that's interesting. So let's see what's really conscious and clear to you in this situation at the moment. I think you need to know that this is a pretty embedded sort of thing. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to do this. though I think you probably know that already. Let's see what you're conscious of. The Emperor reversed. The Empress reversed. Wow. The High Priestess reversed. Wow. And the Four of Wands. Wow, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of other people associated with this. Certainly if it's family stuff, you're very different to your parents. Very different to your parents. If it's an organisational energy, then there's something about the way that it is being run and its capacity to grow that has stalled, because it's kind of eating itself in a way. It's like there's not a sense of growth around. You know you're going to bring this to the surface, and you know that what you want is a more harmonious outcome in some way. So the best way of describing this is like in an organisation, or say some sort of group, political group or something like that. The old order has calcified and is no longer sort of producing the goods. All it does is kind of have a blame culture and a competitive culture and a, attack everybody before I'm attacked culture, all of that kind of energy. There's just nothing nurturing in it. You could be sort of someone who brings that to the surface and makes that clear, but your aim is about getting a better way of interacting. Your provocation is not about just creating, again, a new edifice where you just happen to be the boss. It's not about that. That's why we're seeing Saturn and the South Node is moving away from those old structures and old ways of doing things to something that's more collaborative. So that's what you want to do. That's what this is about. But I think it's trying to say this is really deeply embedded. So it's like it may be cautioning you a bit because you're going to be so agitated, and this is a fast environment. Things move quick. You may want to do that, but it's like kind of a gradual reveal may be better for you because you need to bring people along with you in some way. So let's see, what is unconscious or in shadow for you in relation to this? The Star. Four of Cups. I'm just getting to shuffle in between each for some reason. The Five of Cups. The Tower. Wow, this is big. People who've come to this is big. If it was around family or whatever, you may well sort of say, look, I'm sorry, either you accept who I am or I'm going to go and find my own family. And as I say, but I think for many of you, it's just around power. Okay, so what's in shadow? What you have to work out is, and know is, let's talk about it if it's like in a workplace or politically or something, and then I'll talk about it otherwise. What is being driven within you from a true understanding that old systems have to collapse and have to change? And what is being driven from you in feeling not seen and recognised and appreciated? Because it's really important to let go of any of the energy of this that's coming from personal disappointment. There could be a thing here where you feel unrecognised, where you feel that your skills are not seen and all that kind of thing. And it's like you want the system to fall so that you not necessarily become, as I say, because you're not about becoming the other thing. You do ultimately want people to get on better, but it's kind of like this is the only way to make my point. This is the only way to prove. It's almost like I need to be proven right by showing that everything falls, and then people will appreciate me. So there's that kind of energy potentially operating in this. This is just the shadow thing. It's just to be aware where that's the case, and it's saying here that you're capable of moving past that. So because you are capable of moving, your ultimate aim is sort of something better and more harmonious. But the shadow of what could be triggering this is the preparedness. And this is the Grand Cross, the preparedness to see everything fall so that you would be right, proven to be right. And I think what you're being asked to do at the moment by Spirit, this is why it's sort of asking you to think about a slow reveal of things and start to sort of show a different way of doing things rather than just waiting to see it fall. There's a real energy here about lack of action is just as potentially hazardous as too much action. It's like getting the balance right, because lack of action is kind of like almost being complicit, just letting it fall and going, see? On the other hand, too much action could create the new system and you're just the head of it and it hasn't really shifted the energy. So there's something here about you understanding that. That's what's really important, because there's a lot at stake here. Now, if it's around family, it could be that there really is the possibility of a very big split here if you aren't recognised. But again, it's asking you, is that necessary? If it's necessary, fine. Take what you can, move away, connect with who you can, move away otherwise. But what is the emotional thing behind this, which is going to the moon part of this? Because that's the key for you in knowing what to do. So let's have a little bit more of a look about what's in shadow and light. So what I wanted to do is use a deck that is about shadow, ask a couple of questions, and then a deck that's about light to show you one of the ways to balance that out. So this is just going to ask a couple of questions for you to consider in working this out and working out how to get the balance right and what to present and how much action to do and in what way. So first question is, what are my controlling tendencies and what am I trying to control? I feel like it's about being recognized because you're different, and you bring something different. It is really valuable, but what would you try and control? How would you play that out? What's going on there? Because you're feeling caught by a system that is not functioning well, or a family dynamic that is not, supportive and nurturing. So, but what are your controlling tendencies? What are you trying to control? And what are the stories I tell myself that keep me stuck in a negative mindset? So you're aiming ultimately for a better and more harmonious energy. But if you get angry and frustrated by the energy, you might stay in a negative mindset, which, as I say, either stops it from changing. Very easy with this sort of energy, if you sort of got very emotional and very critical rather than conciliatory, for people to just go, oh, you're jealous, or you don't understand it, or you're a conspiracy theorist, or whatever it might be. Like, it's easy to do that if you stay in a negative mindset. The key here is to clear the emotional blocks, because then you can be the star, but it's being a star by something that's a healthier outcome. But if you're kind of part of a system and you're sort of caught up in its dynamics, it's hard, on a shadow level, it's harder to do that. So let's see what the light energy is to sort of help you work through those shadows. And this is a tricky, big issue in whatever it is for you. So, we've got soul star energy, conscious connection. Yeah, connection with others. Be the peacekeeper, not just the contrarian. You can raise different issues, but raise them in a respectful way where people can talk it through. If you have to move away from a family situation or something, do it respectfully and keep the contact with those that you can. And think on a higher vibrational level, because a lot of this is around your spiritual energy, which is that even if in the material world at the moment, you have to sort of move away to express yourself, because otherwise you're going to get caught up in a system that's not healthy for you. It doesn't mean that you're actually detaching from everybody, because on a consciousness level, we all remain connected anyway. So I think this is how you rise above the inherent competitive nature of this environment, because there is something very competitive operating. Okay, so let's get you some mythical support. I sort of felt these ones were going to be pretty big energy, so I thought I'd try and get you a couple of Greek mythology figures to sort of help you as well. So firstly, we have Kronos. Okay, this is the Saturn energy. It's about time, taking your time, but it is also about understanding the nature of the order that you're dealing with, the things that you're dealing with. For some of you, if this is a family thing, it's pretty big. It's sort of like really expressing yourself in a different way so that you're not consumed by the old energy of the family dynamic. Because Kronos was really sort of threatened by his children and tended to eat them. So he was eventually tricked by his wife Rhea, and that's how we got Zeus. But there is a kind of a sense of the consuming paradigm, the consuming order, and so forth. And also the consuming and binding aspect of time and karma. But I think it is also saying here, when we've got the sort of time energy in Kronos, that Kronos is here also for you to liberate yourself from old karma. There is something karmic about this. It is a test for you, I think. Then we also have Apollo, which is going towards what is creative. Okay, that could be a bit of a clue. The Four of Wands, not only is that sort of teamwork, but it's Wands energy that is more creative and more collaborative, as opposed to Wands energy that can be more competitive and impatient. There is a clue here too with the Queen of Wands, because that is a self-actualized energy. There is probably someone in the midst of all this that can connect with you, and a connecting on a creative level about collaboration is probably the key to break this cycle. So Kronos and Apollo are helping you around that sort of energy. All right. Also thought that it would be good to sort of see chakra energy. What around you is in balance or not in balance in this situation. So we're just going to get 3 cards, see what energy we're looking at for you. So firstly, the root chakra. I am trusting others. Balance. So that's good. I think you do know where there are people who, whether it's people within the situation or outside of it or a bit of both, you do know who you can trust. So you're not wrong about your energies around that. That's not the issue. The issue is more, understanding yourself and your own drives in it. Then we have the solar plexus. That's also balanced. I do have the ability to meet challenges. So you know that you can do this. You know that you're strong enough. It's interesting. The first house has all the sort of yellowy colouring up there in that deck. And here we have the red colouring, like at a basis, you have the capacity to know who to trust in a situation that is provocative. And we have the crown chakra, underactive. I sense separation. So you feel very caught in the material world or in this issue. That might be why it's sort of saying, think about the emotional stuff, get back to the heart, because this is meant to connect you to that. But it's almost like in the dynamic, the Saturn and South Node is dominant over the Moon and Neptune. So connecting back to your spiritual self, connecting back to the cosmic consciousness is going to be really, really helpful for you in balancing this. Okay, so let's also get you some stars to guide you, and then we'll get you some final advice. So stars to guide in navigating this provocative time of self-expression. We have third house. Communication is very key. How you communicate, what you communicate. And it's in a fast environment. You've got Mercury on your side here. Mercury is very, very fast, so that is helpful. We have the waxing crescent moon, the setting, set your intention. So right now it's saying be clear on what you want. That's why it's saying make sure that you know if there is anything here where it's like you let the system fall just to prove yourself right, clear yourself of those emotional energies, connect consciously, because ultimately what you want is to clear the karma. You don't clear the karma if you do that. And it's not just your karma. I think it's the karma of others around you, family, organizations, and so forth. And fixed. So you could be one of the fixed signs. Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius have those, strong in your chart. But I think this is about setting your intentions about what in the fixed environment there is that you need to communicate to get more flexibility, because you're moving up. It's very fixed energy around the devil card, even though the devil card is Capricorn and that's not one of the fixed signs. It's just a sense of getting past what is stuck, setting your intentions about how to communicate to do that. All right. To kind of just lighten it a bit, hopefully, what I wanted to do was just end up with some advice from the Enchanted Forest at the end of all of this, because I did have a feeling that these readings might be fairly heavy. This one is, but it's got a lot of potential as well, and you have a lot of strength and a lot of ability, but you also have to be very, very clear on what you're doing and how to do it. So the final advice is fulfillment. You don't need anyone's approval to pursue and fulfill your purpose. Embrace your unique journey and trust that it's leading you where you need to go. So don't seek others' approval of what you're doing, because there is a little bit of that with the star there. Sort of like if some of this is like, oh, if I did this, people would approve or would understand me. That's not the thing. Clear that energy. Go forward with what you know is truly you and what you need to do. You will find that you do bring people together and that you have people who do approve and people who are on your side. But that shouldn't be the reason. That should be a nice benefit as you go along. So I hope that this resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, part 2, to your reading. So you came to the reading with the Hierophant, which to me, as I said, can mean anything from learning, teaching, sort of spiritual sort of matters, particularly spiritual traditions, things that are sort of like well documented, well understood. People tend to learn them, study them, that kind of thing. The act of study itself. Also, interestingly, it comes up a lot around creative things in, to me, the industry of whatever the creative engine is. And I think there might be sort of something associated with that quite literally in this reading. It doesn't have to be. It could be a bit broader than that. It could also be about, in fact, for this one, it could be either that, I would say, or something about the creation of love. So it could be either of those things. So we'll get a little bit more of an idea with the tarot, but I'll probably talk about both here. The first thing I would say is, with the Hierophant card here in this deck is actually based on a particular art style. So it's called the Art Nouveau period. And the name of the actual painter or artist is escaping me now at the moment. I'm sorry for that, but they have a very unique, sort of very beautiful style. So it's interesting. I think that coming to this deck, there's something about you that has an artistic temperament, a creative temperament, or a love of beauty, a love of form, a love of creativity. There's some sort of energy around that. I feel like this blue sort of gem that seems to be sitting at the top of the crown chakra of the Hierophant is about speaking of this in some way. I feel like it's connecting to the throat chakra, where there's also like a blue clasp on what he's wearing. So I feel like there's something here about a creative or spiritual idea and a tradition that you are meant to express. There's some challenges around it, which I'll talk about. But I also think, as I say, when I see the Hierophant, particularly when I'm looking at sort of creative sort of readings, I will tend to say there's something here about the industry in which your creativity is operating. So the most pure way I would look at it on that level, and I'll do that first, and I'll talk about it spiritually and also in terms of relationships and love, because it could be touching on any of these. If this is a creative thing, if you're a creative person, and I do have quite a lot of creative people who come to my readings, so hopefully you've found this reading if this is the right time for you. With the fifth house around creativity and void of course, moon missing, is sort of like, this is where emotionally or the sort of connection to one's creative core is feeling like a bit missing or feeling a bit lost. It's only a period of time. Whatever we're talking about here, it's only a period of time. But it may happen cyclically because the moon operates cyclically. So in your creative process, there may be a period of time where you feel like I'm completely lost. I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know if I'm ever going to get the traction. It could be a cycle of trying to connect to the industry. So a good example would be if you wrote a book and you're trying to get it published in a traditional way or get an agent or something like that. So there's something here that you need to know about what is just part of the cycle and that this will pass, and what is more part of the industry in which you're working. So it could be that, if you're constantly sort of putting forward a book and it's not working, there might be something about industry, understanding the industry, that gets you out of this cycle and gives you the direction. So for some of you, it's going to be about that. Spiritually, similarly, this suggests that there is a great deal of creative connection and probably downloads on a kind of visual level. I sort of feel fifth house, creativity, clairvoyance, all that kind of thing. But again, it's like you're not sure where to place this or where to put it. For that, I would say if you're sort of someone who is, having really interesting dreams, seeing sort of strange things, strange symbols or whatever in meditations or whatever, there's actually, with some study into those symbols, you'll find they belong to a tradition. So there's something here about connecting that so that you're not just experiencing it but being lost about what it is. For some of you, particularly visually, I think, but in any way creatively, Spirit is trying to talk to you and bring you messages, but they connect back to traditions in some way. So to give you an example, when I first sat in guided meditation many years ago, I saw lots of symbols which I didn't know what they were, but when I looked them up, they were all connected to alchemy. So then I looked into alchemy, learnt about that and aligned to that. So Spirit will often talk in those ways. So for some of you, that's what it's saying. The third thing this could be is fifth house is also about love and all that kind of thing. And the Hierophant therefore can be looking for a settled and committed love relationship that would fit in with your culture, in with your kind of longer term plans around that. You may feel that you're missing something there. It's not clear to you how to sort of bring love in. So it could be any or all of those. I think in the latter one, if it's around love, it's trying to say it's just a time, just give yourself time. I think the others, it's kind of understand what you're dealing with, the traditions, the symbols, whatever it might be. So let's use tarot to see if we can find out a little bit more about what this primary message is. Then we're going to have a look at what's really conscious about it and what's unconscious about it. So a little bit more around the primary message that Spirit is bringing you right now. Seven of Wands reversed, Queen of Cups, Three of Wands reversed, Two of Swords reversed, the Hanged Man reversed. Okay. So I'll talk about it on all three levels because it could be any of those. So if this is around some sort of creative project, you're not feeling confident at this point in time. This is what this energy is about, to take your work forward. It's what you want it to be, and it's something you really care about. And it's actually far more developed than you maybe give yourself credit for, but you're not sure what direction to take it, and therefore you don't know what to do. So a very good classic way of reading that would be, I've written a book. Do I try and get an agent? Do I try and get it published, or should I self-publish? What should I do with this? You're kind of in that sort of situation at the moment. It's actually good work. You're just not sure, will it fit the industry? Should I go out on my own? What's the best thing to do? And as a result, you're kind of in this space. You're not making decisions. I think Spirit would be saying that's okay as long as it's a temporary thing. You do need to work out what you want to do, but maybe really working out what was the core emotional drive behind a creative thing would help. You are avoiding decisions, though. You need to think differently about that. It's very interesting, actually, the Two of Swords to me, whether it's upright or reversed. One of the things I noticed a lot in my job, and I think it works in many ways, is that a lot of people will do anything rather than potentially make the wrong decision or be proven wrong. So it's like, I won't make, like one of the things that really stop people, and it would stop you creatively in other ways as well too, stop people sort of like being able to kind of move up the ladder, sort of take positions of responsibility, is that they just wouldn't make a decision because they didn't want to be wrong, or they could never admit they were wrong. And I always thought that was curious because the reality about this, and one of my sayings is that life is making decisions with imperfect information. Like we're always, to some degree, in a Two of Swords situation. We always are. Even if we've studied everything incredibly, there's still going to be variables we don't know. But that's okay. Intelligence is not always getting everything right. Intelligence is being able to assimilate and course correct and learn more as you go along. So I think this is sort of saying, think about this differently. If you're trying to get something published, for instance, then choose a course, see what happens, work out what's happening in the industry and all that kind of thing. If it doesn't work, is it about the work that you go back and you edit, or is it actually about, do it differently? See it as an exploration. And then as long as you are learning and moving and progressing, you can sort of pat yourself on the back, because to some degree, otherwise, if you sort of like the first book that you ever wrote got published, you may not even know why, and then you try and replicate it later. So it's not necessarily great to have the sort of early win. There's actually something to be said for learning more and more about the system that you're in, and we've got to be prepared to make decisions that could be wrong to do that, and feel okay about it, because it's not in any sense a real thing about the worth of what you're doing, the intelligence you have, any of those sort of things. So I think there's sort of something about being brave to do that, to explore operating here, whether it's around something creative, whether it's around spiritual stuff. It may be that you're getting a lot of stuff as downloads and it's sort of like it's frightening you a bit, like what does this mean? This is saying you don't have to decide on anything yet, just explore it. This is meant to make you sort of see things differently, have a broader perspective. If you just see it as that, as the images and the messages are coming to you and you're meant to learn more and find out more who you are, see it on that level. And if it's about love, then again, you're worried about making the wrong move or choosing the wrong person, possibly because you've felt you've done that before. You really don't know how to kind of express your heart. And again, think about it differently. It may be that you need to just work out where are the best places for meeting the people that could have an alignment with you, sort of emotionally, spiritually, whatever it might be. But you've got to kind of work out how to get out there and how to be okay with the fact that you're not going to know everything at first. So the Hierophant wants to know everything, right? The Hierophant wants to be the font of all knowledge, but even the Hierophant has to learn, otherwise it calcifies. So it's either you need to learn about the systems that you're in, or you need to understand that there's no end point where you suddenly know it all. It's like this is a process. So let's see what you're really conscious of in this situation. The Devil, the Seven of Pentacles reversed, the Hermit, the Four of Cups. Okay. You're really conscious of whatever this block is. That's good. So you're not in denial about it. There's something like, so again, if I look at this as sort of maybe sort of creative energy and fitting in. You know that there are things within the industry, there are rules, there are established ways of doing things. And that if you don't follow those, you're not going to get the return on investment. You just know. You know that there are things that you have to do. And that's whether you like it or not. You also know that you have a spiritual underpinning for everything you're doing. So there's a kind of a little bit of a clash going on here. And you know that you're feeling a bit emotionally stuck. You're feeling stuck in general. Like how do you... So, if you were to write a novel and you had a very strong spiritual message in it, and then, to get it traditionally published, they took all that out and just made it into a, I don't know, fantasy adventure or something, then that would be very unsatisfying. So it's like, how do you work your way through that and learn how to keep the messages you want in without losing the sort of material outcome? That there's a little bit, whether it's about creativity, whether it's about your spirituality, even whether it's about love, there is a little bit of a conflict operating between the material outcome and creating something in the world and staying pure to the vision. So you know that that's an issue. So it's like, if you're going to look at anywhere where you toss up ideas and so forth, it's how you kind of get a balance between these two things. Because we are in the material world and we are in systems, and we need to understand that. Like, just getting upset with them isn't going to get us anywhere. Learning about them and then working out where do we have the illumination to get past blocks, that's the thing to do. So what's unconscious with this? What's maybe in shadow for you? Because we are going to look at shadow. I thought with these readings that I had a feeling that there would be sort of like some blocks to deal with and some shadow to deal with. And I do think there's something here about breaking through to being comfortable with both finding a compromise when you have to, whether that's in love or creativity or spirituality, or being comfortable with the fact that you're not going to have all the answers at first. You've got to sort of build that up. So the shadow, King of Pentacles, Eight of Wands, Knight of Cups reversed, Ace of Wands reversed. Okay. So I sort of feel like these readings are a little bit of tough love, but I think, that's the point, is like what's in shadow to understand all of this. What this is saying is that you're not going to get the offer that you want, whether it's love, whether it's creative, even whether it's spiritual. You won't fully get the kind of connection that you're looking for until you work out how this is going to manifest materially and what that means. And who else is involved in this, whether it's a partner in a love relationship, whether it's sort of like a business in something creative, whether it's other people in the world around spiritual things. So you have a wish to quickly get an outcome. And this is what this is showing to me. So using it as a creative thing. Creative's the best one to talk about, but apply it to whatever works. This is showing someone who, in their shadow, wants to think that they can break through everything and move faster than other people. You kind of accept that other people, do have to go through that, but there's a kind of a sense of my thing should just rise above that. And while you think that, and you try and sort of like jump the hoops and avoid, having to sort of deal with all the steps that everybody else is doing, you're not going to get the offers and it's not going to go anywhere. So it's like you do need to understand, as I say, you can have all the talent in the world, and I think you are very talented, creatively, spiritually, whatever it is. But if you don't take into account the system that you're in and you think the rules don't apply to you and everything should go quicker and easier for you, you're not going to get the outcome you want. So it's like understanding, you do need to understand the system as well. Talent is one thing, but understanding the context is important. Same thing with spirituality. If you sort of feel that like you've got spiritual gifts, so things should just all manifest for you easily, you're not going to find that happen, because that's not the reason the spiritual gifts are coming through. You need to understand them in a context for how they serve others as well as you. So that's going on. But there's an impatience energy here. This is like, I feel like it's like there's a system that is slow and has its rules, and you feel lost in that because you just want to be in that creative energy. And I have come across that with quite a few creative people in my life, that their energy is fast, it's mercurial, it's fiery, it's dramatic, and they just want to they just want to create. They don't want to be dealing with all the rest of that. And I really do understand it. Like, I know when I sort of wrote, I used to think, I don't want to have to deal with having to try and get things published. I just like doing the writing. But if you want to do something with it, you need to understand the system that you're in. So that's something going on here. And if it's about love, it might be that you're trying to go too quickly to a committed outcome, and therefore it isn't It isn't flowering. So whatever this is sort of like a thing about you're allowed to feel a little bit lost every once in a while. But use that as a thing to understand more about what you're dealing with, the other person, if it's a love relationship, the system, if it's creative, the underarching tradition of knowledge and spiritual understanding, if it's something spiritually that's coming through to you, so that you can manifest what's there, so that you can be the smiley face, not the sort of like frustrated face. But this is something. You want to do it quicker. You want the rules not to apply to you. And no criticism. We'd all like to think the rules didn't have to apply to us, but they do. So let's have a look at shadow and light then. So as I said, I sort of knew these readings were going to be a little bit maybe tougher than usual, because this is something you really need to know. So I'm going to pull 2 cards that ask questions for your shadow side to think about, and then I'm going to use a deck to sort of look at the light energy that helps you reconcile those questions or deal with them. So the first question for you is, how do I react to obstacles, and what does it reveal about my determination? Yeah, this is a big thing. This is a big thing. It's like, if you hit an obstacle and it isn't going fast, you just drop that and try something else, in which case you're not going to learn what you need to learn for the next time for a start, and you're not going to get the outcome you want. So there is something here about, do the obstacles throw you into this and then you sort of like walk away from something, or do you go, I'm going to learn from it? There's still an open door there, like that's what you've got to be sort of thinking about. And then the second question for you is, what unhealthy habits do I have, and what are they masking? Okay. So when you're in this phase, when you're feeling lost, this is something to consider. What do you do? Do you sort of like withdraw from everybody? Do you go into I'm a genius, why don't people see it sort of like energy? Do you self-medicate in some way? Do you, sort of assume the position on the couch and watch too much TV? Like what happens when this occurs? Because again, if you can break that habit, you're more than halfway towards, really getting in the flow of learning about what you're doing and moving forward and getting past the obstacles. So, if you've got obstacles that maybe send you off into doing things that aren't healthy and don't take you forward and make you feel a bit lost, what's the light energy that could help you? Sacred soul union. Okay, for some of you, if this is about love, this is very clearly saying somebody is meant to come in, but if you rush it, it won't work for you. You've got to kind of look for the signs and allow it to grow, and it may not be easy. Like soul unions often aren't easy at first. There's a lot at stake. I talk about tower relationships where it's sort of like everybody's so vulnerable. So there's something like that. Otherwise, I think this might be a soul union within. It may be your sort of sun and moon. So the sun being the life path and the creativity and the wanting to be seen, the moon being the connection and the nuance and the Queen of Cups sort of energy. It could be marrying those two things and keeping them in balance is the thing that like slows you down just enough to say, this is sacred. What do I do? How do I grow this? How do I make it work within the system that I'm in? So however that works and whatever this is about, there's something either about another person and bringing that energy in and making sure that you make all the preconditions, what they need to be for that, or it's your own union within of your sort of like life force, ambition, creativity, and your kind of emotional and spiritual sort of underpinning. Okay. So I also thought we might get you some pretty heavy hitter sort of like spiritual guidance from the Greek pantheon as well, because I really did feel these, and so far this is true, they have had some kind of not necessarily heavy messages, but challenging messages. So let's see a couple of Greek mythological supports around you. Pegasus. Okay, so this is about, you are meant to be able to fly. You are meant to be able to succeed. I don't think Spirit would be talking to you about this, whether it's about love, creativity, spirituality, unless you were meant to fly. But it's interesting because Pegasus for a long time was in service to others. So there might be something here about being in service to others is the best way for your creative gifts or your spiritual gifts, or even to bring in love, whatever it is. That's the thing that will ultimately lead to you being able to fly and be free. It's like it can't just be about, as I say, you have the genius talent, and you may well, like I'm not actually saying you don't. I'm just saying that you're still in a system, and if you don't navigate the system, then the genius isn't seen. But you are meant to fly. You are meant to be free in the end. And the Minotaur, okay, you need to go into the shadow. and understand the power of the shadow. So this is, and it's a bit of a labyrinth. And there's a good analogy for this. It's like you're having to go into the labyrinth and deal with the power that already exists so that you can then have the freedom to fly and be valued in love, in creativity, spiritually, whatever it is. If you are dealing with spiritual stuff, then it's probably quite a lot that's coming from the sort of the underworld or that kind of energy, the shadow world. Not to frighten you or whatever, but to give you information and understanding. So don't feel lost if that's happening. That just look for the deeper meaning within the spiritual traditions that are associated with it. Okay, so let's also get you some chakra balance around this. What chakras are working in balance, what ones could be under or overactive that are relevant to you taking this message and I think achieving what you want to achieve, because I think you have all the skill. That's never been in doubt. The issue is understanding how best to manifest it. So firstly, we have the third eye chakra. I see and can be overly analytical. So there's a balance here that you have to strike, because on one level, the energy around this is to just sort of want to charge forward and so forth. But I think when you are now trying to understand the system you're in, it's a balance between the creative fire and understanding the system. If you tilt too much to the other side, you may get this sort of Two of Swords reverse. I can't make a decision because I'm analysing everything and I need all the data. To be in an organisation, when you're making decisions, when you're a leader, you have to have a certain amount of data. You have to understand the system you're in. But if you spent all your time looking at data, you'd never make a decision. So there is something here about getting a balance between understanding the system and just acting. So it's sort of saying don't go too much in the other direction either. Again, it doesn't matter if you get something a bit wrong as long as you learn from it. Then we have the root chakra, balanced. I am feeling like I belong. Okay, you do think you belong in whatever this is. In a love match, if you've met someone in the creative world, that's who you really are. In the spiritual world, so that's good. At your core, this is what you're meant to be doing. So that's good. It's not a question about am I in a fish out of water. You're not. You just need to understand how to thrive in this situation or how to thrive in this relationship. And we get the sacral chakra. I feel arrogance, overactive. Yeah, because this is the shadow energy that I'm seeing here. And we all get like that sometimes. So I don't mean that as a criticism, but you need to know enough and back yourself enough that you don't get paralyzed into sort of analysis paralysis. You need to know that you're on the right path, which you are. But it's there is a sense here that you feel like you should be a bit above the rules. And even if you are a genius, as I say, some of you may well be, there's still a system. So even some of the biggest geniuses that we know about from history had to have the patronage of people in power and so forth. Otherwise, we'd never have known they'd existed. So that's, I think, the thing you've got to get into balance. It's sort of not being too doubting of yourself, but also not being too, I know it all and that's all there is, because those two things can trap you. But knowing that you're in the right place and therefore putting the energy in will help you. Okay, let's get you some stars to guide you before we close out with some final advice. So, firstly, we have fixed. Okay, so this is, I do think that saying you are where you're meant to be, what you want to do, whatever this is about, is what you're meant to do. You're not actually lost. It's not actually telling you you're doing the wrong thing. It's just saying you are meant to do this. You do have talents or love or whatever it is to bring to this. You just need to understand more about the environment so that it thrives and stay with it. Don't give up. Then we have Pluto. Okay, so there's major change operating here. This is big. Whatever this is big. It's big to your life path. It's a big relationship. It's a big spiritual thing, whatever it might be. And there is something spiritually, for those that this is spiritual, you have a very Plutonian sort of underworld, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but that kind of you're very comfortable with that sort of stuff. You're able to deal with it more than most. So that energy is very powerful in you. It might be overpowering in others, and that might be what you need to understand. And Earth, yeah, you need to ground this, because it's sort of you could be you could be a reader, and you could be a reader that goes to the shadow all the time. I try to look at those sort of things, what's unconscious or whatever. This is one of the more shadowy sets of readings that I've done, but I don't do it a lot because I'm sort of aware that a lot of people they have to be at a point where they're comfortable with that. I think this collective is very strong and able to deal with it, but nevertheless, I try to tread easy. There are readers who go right for it all the time, and I think that can be very, very useful. I'm not criticizing it, and they are very comfortable with it. And I think you might be that sort of person if you move in a spiritual thing. The thing here is, though, that you need to be aware of the power of it, and that can, not everybody is as powerful. And not to go into an arrogant thing like, oh, well, they should do it. And not to censor yourself too much to think, oh, I can't say anything. It's like, what really grounds this energy? What is practical? Like if you go for the practical and you sort of stay on course, then that's good. If you're writing something and you know that it's sort of groundbreaking, so don't feel arrogant, but equally don't worry too much. Just look at what's the practical way. How will this bring about change? It's like there's a nuance here in understanding your audience or your industry, I think. That's what this is talking about. Okay, so let's just go to the Enchanted Forest and let's get a final piece of advice for you, pile 2. Embodiment. Now is the time to make your mark in the world. Yeah, I do think that's true. You decide what feels right to you. Embody your leadership power and create your world out of your deepest desires. Yeah, this is deep. It's deep within. This is why it's important to give it the time and the capacity to grow, and to not feel lost if it isn't instantly responded to, and to not want to rush it too much. It's sort of like this has got a legacy feeling to it. This has got something that is really, and if it's a relationship, this has a really strong kind of connection associated with it. So you're meant to do that now, but this is just advice about how to deal with other people and the situation that you're in, so that you don't take yourself off course sometimes. So I hope that resonates for you, Palto. I hope it was helpful. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. So you came to the reading with the Death card from the Land of Stories Tarot. Now, one of the things about the Land of Stories Tarot is that it associates major arcana cards with fairy tales. So the fairy tale that the Death card is associated with in this deck is the Little Match Girl. So if you are familiar with the Little Match Girl, it's actually a really sad story about a poor girl who sells matches, but she's so cold outside that she starts to use them to stay warm and eventually runs out of the matches. So she can't keep herself warm, and she doesn't have anything to make money. So a lot of fairy stories are really quite challenging, I have to say, and that's one of the saddest ones. It's interesting that they chose that for Death, but what they say in the way they talk about it with this deck is it's about being open to change and taking choices that would be good, even if you feel that it's taking something really precious from you. It's like the only way to get through this is actually to make the change. So there's something about the Death energy in this particular deck, which is about facing not just a choice. And I always see the Death card as a choice. It's not about death. It's about choice and transition. I feel that this energy of this deck, with the way that they portrayed death, and if you've been drawn to this card, given the way that it's shown here with almost the Angel of Death and the Little Match Girl, you know there's a choice you've got to make where one part of your life really does have to kind of die or move away so that the other part can be born, and there is a cost associated with it. So therefore, it's interesting that we've got Mars energy, which is force, like wanting to just do something, act, with Virgo, which is analysing and looking at the consequences. So I think that this is not an easy choice, whatever this is, in whatever aspect of life it's in. And this isn't telling me what aspect. We may see a little bit more with the tarot. But it could be that this is for anybody who has a major choice where you can't have both. And it's almost got, to me, elements of how I would see the Judgment card, where there's a period of time where you have to make that choice. Otherwise, the choice goes away. There's a sense with Mars of an urgency around it. But there is also that you are very aware of consequences. This is actually a really powerful thing to have in this situation. A wise person said to me once that very few people have consequential thinking, and I think she was absolutely right. If you look at what's happening in the world and how people often make the same mistakes over and over, people often operate in the moment, and Mars tends to do that. So like, I've got a imperative here, a change, a choice, and like I'm going to lose something, so I have to act really quickly. But you don't necessarily think of the consequences, and later on you might sort of regret the decisions. But on the other hand, you've got Virgo here, which is saying, I'm analysing this. So I'm not making the decision quickly. I'm making it with with a real practical understanding of what's involved. Now, the thing about that is it also can make it really challenging emotionally and psychologically, because it's the non-avoidant way of making a choice. People will sometimes make a choice by denying there even is one, and they rush forward, and that gets them past the choice and it's done, but they could, as I say, repent later. But what psychologically that does for them is that they don't really have to think of it as a sacrifice. They just think this is inevitable, or this is fate, or this is karma, rather than kind of like understanding that there are implications in the choice, and one may need to look at the choice in a bit more detail. So that this is good that you do that, I think. Overall, it bodes well that your choice is likely to be more considered. It's not rushed, but there is a kind of a time imperative here. And it's a choice that you don't have much choice about with Mars there. So I don't know what this is. It could be around a career decision. It could be, and in that case, it'd be probably where an organisation was downsizing or changing, and it was sort of like you don't have much choice, that you've either got to go into a different team or you've got to leave the organisation. It's how you do it, like what the timing of it and how you do it and what you get out of it. If it's a love relationship, it might be I've either got to really shift the way this is, or it's over. Like there's a real finality to one aspect of this so that something else can occur. But it's sort of weird, because I feel like this is sort of saying, when it's saying analyze, that you could choose either, but there are consequences of doing that. So in a relationship, if you feel like it's I think it's over, I don't think I can do anything anymore, I've had enough, you make the choice to just leave really quickly. It might have been that if you thought it through, you could have resolved it. That kind of thing. So there's sort of something here about your capacity to see the consequences of things is a really strong energy that you have around this. But there's a time imperative. So let's see if we can find out a little bit more with tarot. Then we're going to look at what's really conscious and clear to you, and also what's unconscious or in shadow around it for you. So a little bit more about what this choice dynamic is. 10 of Pentacles reversed. Nine of Pentacles reversed. Ace of Wands reversed. Justice reversed. Wow. It's a Little Red Riding Hood with Justice, which is kind of interesting. Wheel of Fortune reversed. And the High Priestess. Okay. So firstly, just quickly, the fairy stories, and I'm actually not familiar with this one, but I'll bear in mind the others in reading this. Justice is Little Red Riding Hood. Wheel of Fortune is Sleeping Beauty. A High Priestess is somebody's wise daughter. Let me just double check that for you, because I was not familiar with this one. But just in case you are familiar, the peasant's wise daughter. So just for those who are interested on that kind of layer, because of the nature of this deck. So there's something that's not right. This is why it's being forced. With Justice reversed, there is something that is unjust, something that is wrong. And there isn't much time, or the timing is not able to be determined really. In fact, it's a time of a decision which is not ideal to make the decision, to be honest, with the Wheel of Fortune reversed. I don't really see the Wheel of Fortune reversed as being that much worse or better than the Wheel of Fortune upright. It's just because the wheel just turns, and sometimes you're on the rise and sometimes you're not. But it is saying at the moment of what this is occurring, and time is an imperative here, it doesn't feel like an ideal time. It feels like, in a way, whichever choice you have, you feel like it won't be right. Like whatever, when you're analysing, at the end of the day, it's looking for the least bad option rather than the best option, which is, again, a bit like the energy there. Now, that doesn't mean go off in despair at this point, but it just means that you're kind of very aware of what's going on. Therefore, with the High Priestess, you have a kind of your own mystery and understanding psychically, spiritually, about what to do with that. And I feel like, with the title, like the preacher or whatever it was, wise daughter, I think there's a sense that you do have the wisdom to deal with this. And this has to do with this consequential thinking. You do see that, and you're not afraid to see that. So you're not sort of someone who's going to be in denial and then just catapult yourself into something you have no control over. Even if it's two not ideal options, you will choose the least not ideal, and you probably have the best chance, by really understanding and seeing it on a very deep level, to make the best out of it. You need other people's involvement. You can't do all this on your own, and it has to be slowed down as much as it can. You can't just, as I say, you need to know other people's views. You need to know the impact on other people. This, if it's in a workplace, it could be a decision that's going to impact other people. If it's in a love relationship and it's a choice between two people, it might not be that either is entirely ideal at the moment, but one ultimately could be the better choice and you could grow better together. But other people are associated with this. It's not something that you're on your own. And it may be for some of you, the choice you make has a direct impact on others as well. Because, the subtext of the little match girl is she's outside, if I remember correctly, like a restaurant or something where people are eating fine food. So they're right outside the door, there's someone who's starving. And they're not seeing it. So I think you do understand that. You understand the implications on others. You understand that's why you have to just not barrel in with the Mars energy. You have to understand everything that's going on. You may, in fact, even be in some sort of position where you have to make a decision that is around what is justice, and you can sort of see that neither is 100% just. Like, it's kind of Wisdom of Solomon type stuff, the story with the two women who come and say, this baby's mine. And he says, okay, well, we'll chop it in half. And it's the woman who goes, no, she's the mother. That is obviously the mother because she actually didn't want a child to be chopped in half. It's like that kind of energy. It's like there's not necessarily a really obvious better thing here. It's just that it's at a time where, whether it's a good time or not, you're going to have to make a decision. So you'll probably know if this is the right reading for you if you're in that situation at the moment. But you do have the wisdom. You do have the wisdom, which is really, really good. So what's conscious for you around this choice? The Nine of Swords. Sorry, it's a bit hard to actually work out what that one was. The King of Pentacles. The Eight of Pentacles reversed. Okay. And the Seven of Pentacles. Okay, so one of the things this is saying is that the fact that you're conscious of everything is actually relieving some of the anxiety. Like the people who avoid looking at everything that's going on, whether it's what's going on in the world or what's going on in a situation, because they think that's going to stop anxiety, actually create more anxiety because underneath it's all happening anyway, and then their choice has got far less chance of being the best choice, so then they're just delaying it. So you're conscious of the fact that bringing anxieties up to the surface and looking at them and bearing them in mind and not running away from them is helpful. You know that there is the possibility eventually to turn this situation to your favour, and to build something good, but that right now the lack of choice or the lack of doing things is not going to do that. Like no choice, and sometimes no choice is a choice, but no choice kind of loses all the opportunity for growth. You also know you have the skill and ability to do this. You know that you've sort of seen this or understood this before. As I say, you're wise. You're able to do the consequential thinking. So I think that this is saying that you know that you can turn this around, but you know there's almost a short-term loss either way, but you have the skill to do it. That's why you're not really too anxious when other people around it are anxious. So let's see what you don't know. Like you are very wise. Like you are the right person to be dealing with this, but we all have shadow. We all have unconscious things. So what's going on there in this situation? The Devil. Let's put that up so you can see it. The Hierophant reversed. I presume this is the Ace of Cups. It's a little bit hard to tell sometimes. I'm sorry. This is a very new deck for me. The Emperor reversed. Okay. So I'm not familiar with all of these. In fact, I'm not familiar with the two fairy stories. The interesting thing is the Hierophant here is actually King Solomon's advice, the exact thing I was just talking about. As I say, this is really the first time I've used this deck. So I wanted to sort of this whole thing was to sort of use these decks for the first time. So I'm not really that familiar with all of the stories, and I don't know either of these, but I will tell you just in case you're familiar with them. So the Devil card here is representing a fairy story that's called the Tamamo no Mei. So if you know that story, you can associate what is in that to something that is in shadow here. And the Emperor reversed, or the Emperor, it's talking about the King of the Golden Mountain. So again, I'm not really sure what that is. Maybe it's a bit like King Midas, I'm not sure. Anyway, going back to what this is talking about, the sense like there is something very important to your heart around this. It's not just an analytical exercise. It's not just an action exercise. And you may be trying to protect your heart in this by just being, I'm just going to make the right decision. I'm going to be really detached. Be aware that that's there though. There's an impact there. Also, be aware that there's something in you that wants to break through what you feel are rules, systems, or whatever that you don't think have any purpose anymore. There's something here about tilting against power. So this feels like it's got a kind of social justice sort of aspect to it. And again, this is good. Like having some longer term idea about social justice is really powerful. It's like understanding the consequences of actions. But this is a thing. It is driving you. So if you're aware that it's very close to your heart to break apart systems that end up in something like the Little Match Girl, that's very commendable, but it has its own imperatives. And that could be picking up some of this Mars energy. So in shadow, you may tilt your decision about what justice is to break down old systems. So a good example of that would be, if you were a judge in a court case and the court case had a lot of sort of social and political implications and you didn't like the person who was coming up, you didn't have the same politics. If you used your force and system because you thought in the longer run I'm doing the right thing for everybody, but really it's about a power dynamic you don't like, then you may be in fact creating more from Mars than from Virgo analysing. So there's a need for a detachment from any power issues that really are close to your heart because it's the one area where you could have a blind spot. That's what this is saying. And we all have a shadow. So it's just worth being aware of that. So by and large, you have the wisdom, but then, the high priestess is also things that can be hidden. So this could be what is hidden from yourself and you need to be aware of that. Do you sometimes apply a different standard to situations that involve people that you like or agree with compared to people that you don't, for instance, would be one of the questions to ask. Like, do you have the principles and they apply to everybody equally, or do you have more of a preference sometimes for particular systems or particular people or particular politics or whatever? So that's the question to ask yourself, to be truly using the consequential thinking and the fairness or whatever. And you do want to be fair, like you really do. That's really close to your heart, but you've got a bit of a cause and we always have to be aware of that when we're doing it. So let's have a look at the shadow a bit more. I have a deck that asks questions of the shadow side. So I'm asking what questions are associated with this. Then I have another deck that has the light energy. So how the light energy balances those questions for you. So the first question is, what are my self-destructive thoughts and how can I change them? So this could be it as well. The other shadow in this may not actually be that, you're favouring a side, in some sort of battle, but you may worry that your ability to do this creates in you a sense that you become a despot or something. Like there could be a lot of power that comes from being able to do this and you have a lot of ambivalence about that. So think about that, because if you really are applying justice and consequential thinking and that kind of thing, you can build things that are good. But if you're thinking that I'm then going to become the thing I despise, you don't have to if you're aware of it. And remember, you're more aware of these things than most other people. And the next shadow question is, what are the things I'm in denial about? Why do I dismiss these things? So yeah, this is the thing, like whether it's about a bias, which you could have, and we're human, we all have biases. Again, it's not meant as a criticism. There's a lot of wisdom in this, but it's like how you use it. So are there things that you think that you're analysing everything, but you're ignoring certain things? If that's the case, then that's denial. And why is that? Maybe because of preferences or biases or something like that. And it will get in the way. If you were a scientist and you were trying to experiment on something and you suddenly had a bias towards you wanted this to work, if you started ignoring all the data and all the test results that didn't work, then you wouldn't end up with a good outcome, even if you came from good intentions. So it's something like that. It's like you really are good at analysis, but analysis, data, what they say, garbage in, garbage out. You've got to make sure that you are broad in what you consider, and that you're not kind of like avoiding or filtering stuff to only see the things that fit your worldview. I think that's the one thing, because you are very analytical and you will make really wise decisions more often than not, but you could have some blind spots. So it's how are you aware of that? Be aware of that because it's your Achilles heel. Because you mean well, but, we can all do this. We can all have blind spots. So Spirit's just asking you to look at that. So what light energy can help you? Solar plexus energy, stand in your light. So yeah, it's having the confidence to even look at the things that knowing that your power and energy comes from being able to look at everything rather than just almost a false power of tilting towards what feels most comfortable to you. So yeah, I mean, like, again, going back to the analogy of the little match girl, like if I looked at society now and how a lot of politics operates, it's sort of analogous to there are people who are really suffering in this world, and it's obvious. We have it brought to us on our television screens, all of that kind of thing. And yet, by and large, if we're nice and comfortable in the restaurant eating fine food, we might talk very virtuously and deal with each other very nicely, but we're just not seeing what's outside there. So that's just as an analogy. So it's like your true power comes from looking at it all. You are more able to do that than most. So don't shortchange yourself. Be aware within yourself. Analyze yourself in the same way before you act. Pile 3. Okay, so let's get you some heavy hitter type of Greek mythological support. So I thought these were going to be pretty full on readings, and they have proved to be. So let's get you some real support that's powerful. So firstly, we have the Phoenix. Okay, you will rise. You can deal with some really big things, and even if they seem like impossible, or there's a thing that in politics and social discourse which is called a wicked problem, where there's no solution that's perfect. So if you are in a situation like that, you're still going to be able to rise phoenix-like from whatever it was that you had to leave behind. So you're meant to rise. You're meant to sort of elevate things. That's why you have this wisdom. This is why you're being put in these positions. And the Gorgons, okay, and the capacity. Now this is really interesting. The capacity, again, to understand the consequences of things. The Gorgons were women who were pretty much sort of cursed because of all the kind of like sexual and other politics that existed in ancient Greece, or the pantheon, right? So there's a lot about injustice operating there. So you have a really strong sense about that, and you'll have a sense of a cause. The Gorgons, when used really positively, become a protective energy. When you look at the darkness head on and you don't sort of like understand all the energies of it, you could be frozen. So I think that the Phoenix is giving you the solar plexus energy here, the confidence to be able to almost look at it side on so that you can actually understand the shadow but not be consumed by your shadow. So you can get that balance really well done with the Gorgons there. But it's a very interesting thing, and as I say, the Medusa, who is the main Gorgon, is used as a protective amulet to this day. So, the demonization of the other in that, it's interesting. It was the other was powerful, and that's why they were demonized. So there might be sort of something there for you to consider as well, or that you're very well aware of, which is why it's good. You can do the consequential thinking. Okay, let's get you some stars to guide you. South Node. Okay, there's something very deeply karmic about this, and something has to end again. Like something has to be moved away for the North Node to be approached. So this is definitely a time of change. Aries, that's the Mars energy. That you do need to be ambitious with this. You do need to take action. You are the person to take action or to make the choice. It's just, you need to understand the consequences of things. This is why you're the right person for it. And Neptune, yeah, the sort of spiritual energy, the ideals, the understanding of the ideals. But also I think this is saying that for many of you, this is in a situation where things are not clear. This is why your analytical mind is necessary. To just act on moving away from something without thinking it through is going to lead to far less clear and far less useful outcomes. You understand that, you know that. That's why your Virgo energy here is really, really important. Okay, so last but not least, let's just get you some advice from the Enchanted Forest. No problem. You're not meant to struggle and fight your way through. Drop the concerns of your ego and watch imaginary walls crumble away. You've already won. Okay, the solar plexus. Yeah, this is whatever this shadow stuff is. It's sort of like letting go of all of that, because some of that has to do with, um, it could be even creating problems that don't need to be there. This might be a natural evolution. You've already won. This is heading in the right direction. And then the last thing you want to do, obviously, is to demonize another side, or apply a different standard of justice to others, or any of those sort of things. That's in a response. That's a very Mars in response to a thing. Virgo has analysed it as strategic and knows, like, I know what to do with this. It might feel like it's a difficult choice, but in the end, it's the right choice. So it's sort of saying this: you are the right person for this. You are the right person to make the choice. You do understand consequences. You can plan ahead. But because of that, if you ever wanted to convince yourself with the shadow that you were right, for reasons that were coming more from your own ego or your own issue, you'd be really good at doing it and convincing everybody else. So be eternally vigilant about that. Stay within what is practical and what is consistent, and there's no problem, because you're the right person for it. So I hope that resonates for you. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. If you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.